This evening on Monday, May 9th, 1994, we have gathered here in Staples, Minnesota with the four sons of Frank and Minnie Palmer and their four wives. On our far left, we have Leona, Phoebe, Erv, and Vern, then George, Lloyd, Judy, and Elaine on the far right. We are going to begin by sharing about family background, but first it would be nice to know each of your birth dates and year and where you were born. Did I hear a woo when I said the year? And so we'll begin. Elaine, when were you born and where?
I was born in Ervin County, Minnesota, on the farm, and I was born in 1933. And where?
And the date was?
3rd of June.
The 3rd of June. And who are your parents, Elaine?
Joe and Flossie Kinnear.
And brothers and sisters?
Ione, Merton, Donna, me, Daryl, and Elvin.
Mm-hmm. And you recall your grandparents' name on your dad's side?
Joseph and Annie Kinnear.
Mm-hmm. And on your mother's side?
Clarence and Annie Fox.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Judy, your birth date and where you were born and the year?
I was born April 11th, 1939 in Hennepin County, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Now what do you want?
Who are your parents?
Oh, Mary Hagan and Edward R. Hagan.
And brothers, sisters?
I have one sister, Pat.
And you recall the names of your dad's parents, your grandparents?
No.
And the names of your grandparents on your mom's side?
Angie and Frank Gagne.
Okay,
Now, did you want the mother's maiden names too?
please.
Angeline Bell Klein.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be the only one that you need.
Hey, thanks. Next, Lloyd, birth date and place of birth.
10/27/35. I was born in Morrison County, just outside of Fort Hood, Minnesota. And
I looked it up.
in fact, I just found that out recently.
Really? So what did you think?
You went to Brainerd.
Birth certificate in Crow County, and we were going to Mexico, and found out that they didn't have any record of me in Crow County. It turned out
Was
that,
that for a visa or something?
well, it was something similar to that, yes.
Thank you. George?
Yeah, my birthday is August 12th, 1932, and I was born in Daggett Brook, Minnesota. It's in Croydon County.
Daggett Brook.
Well, that is,
Born on the farm.
okay, same place, not too far from where I was born.
Well, so the two of you were born awful close to each other, huh?
But he moved out just before I was born.
He didn't want to know you, huh?
Not very far apart.
He went wait till I grew up.
Vern?
And my birthday is August 20th, 1926. Born in Crow County, Minnesota.
Where in Crow Wing County?
Where in Crow County?
Yeah.
Out on the farm.
It was on the farm. Okay, thanks. Erv?
My birthday is November 20th, November 26th, I should have said, 1928.
And where were you born, Erv?
I was also born in Croydon County, out in the Pine Center area.
The Pine Center area. Okay, thanks. Phoebe? Birth date and place?
July 25th, 1933. Also born in Kern County, my folks resided north of Village or on a farm.
Mm-hmm.
I was born on the Echo Stock Farm, actually.
The Echo Stock Farm.
Really?
And your parents' name?
Zach and Estella Barnett, Zachariah. My mother's maiden name was Brown. My grandparents were Phoebe and Clyde Brown, and my grandmother Phoebe later married William Richmond, and later married Milo Upton.
Mm.
So it sounds like they had a frivolous family, but she was really a nice lady.
Mhm.
And on my dad's side, my grandmother's name was Elizabeth Warner, and she was married to Enoch Barnett.
Well, thank you. So you were named after your
Both my grandmothers.
grandmothers. Mhm. Leona?
Well, I was born 5/20/27 in Brainerd, Crown County,
Mm-hmm.
and I have 2 brothers and a sister. And my mother was Margaret Meyer and Dad Henry Meyer, and my mother's maiden name was Kramer, and I didn't know any other grandparents.
Maybe we forgot to ask brothers and sisters.
Oh. Did we get everybody else's?
Yeah.
Well, I have quite a large family too. My oldest sister is Marjorie Berg. Can you hear me? My second sister is Mildred Berg. They married brothers. My third sister is Moretta Hansen. And then I have one brother, Alfred Barnett, and one sister that is just older than I, Hazel Harvey.
Thank you. And we'll get to the family here of the 4 brothers. When was Frank's birthday, and does anyone know where he was born?
Eagle Bender, Clarissa,
I thought it was Antoinette.
Dan. Born, it's either Eagle Bend or Clarissa.
Where's Lloyd's
Where he's
Bible?
born.
I got
It's
it
written
all.
in there.
The Bible is upstairs on the little knick-knack shelf.
So what was his birthday?
His birthday was
March
March
9th.
9th, 1904.
But we got a question as far as where he was born.
I thought he was born
I don't
in
think it's gonna be
Blue Earth.
resolved here, so.
I thought he was born in
They
Blue
went up to
Earth.
look
We
for
should
the
have brought
That's
Florence.
what I understood Grandma to say.
He had the Bible with Mom.
They went,
Yeah, we had all that stuff researched here when they made all the family trees, so we should
I guess
have
it's
bought a book along.
I knew
I told her.
We didn't buy one yet.
That's where
That's all I knew. That's all I found out where Lloyd's was
Frank
born.
John Palmer, place of birth, Todd County, March 9th, 1904. While we're at it, Wilhelmina Louise Palmer, also born in Morrison County like I was born in Morrison County, May 16th, 1903.
How many brothers and sisters did Frank have, and what were their names?
Lawrence was, well, Harry was the oldest. Harry and then Lawrence, Carl, one sister Julia.
Can you tell me a little about Harry?
Just a little. Miss
Very
Barber.
Kid, you little bugger.
Go ahead, tell I.
That's about all I know about him. He was in service.
Which side?
We went to Garrison, he barbered there for a few years.
Harry likes some of the pleasantries of life from time to time. And I don't think, Harry was never married.
No, well, he had about,
Too.
but Harry spent most of his time barbering in Belgium.
Some things come out of the closet.
What about, can you tell me a little about Lawrence?
Married Grace. Got 2 sons.
He farmed most of his life,
during World War II, he worked in the shipyards out in Seattle. And then they moved, came back to Minnesota and finally moved to Idaho. That's where he died. And his wife's name was Grace, and then they had Glenn and Don, and their 2 children. Lawrence was probably one of the kinder persons I ever.
I would agree
Big heart.
with that. Nice man.
So we had Harry, Lawrence,
Carl.
Carl. Tell me a little about Carl.
Carl was a fisherman.
He was a fisherman.
He was a fisherman. He made his living fishing and loved to fish. And
All
hunt.
about guiding.
And he spent, I don't know how many years, but at least 20 on Black Lake Bed in that area.
Mhm.
It was about 27.
So he probably caught a couple good sized fish in his days.
Yeah, at least a couple.
And Julia, can you tell me a little about Julia?
Should talk about it.
She- Oh, yeah, Ronnie was Carl's son.
His wife's name was Myrtle.
And his wife's name is Myrtle. Who just passed away this year.
Ron and Myrtle.
Myrtle passed away.
Myrtle passed away this year.
Jewel was a nurse. She took care of, she had her home or a nursing home, and she also went out and took care of people, something like Beth is doing now, at their homes, care of other people's homes. Always a very sweet person.
Very sweet person.
Lived to be, how old was, I don't know, you guys know how old she was?
She was married to Wilson Hayes, had 3 daughters.
She must have been in her 80s.
So,
He's getting up close to the age
she
he is.
was,
Did you go down there for all her tour?
For what?
Just the 3 of us.
she was just a little shorter than your mother. That means she was pretty short. But always a helping hand. Great gal.
She had 3 daughters.
She used to come up to Minnesota every summer, tried to, and stay about a month. And so she brought the girls and her got, they'd stay about a month here, going from one of us places to the other, and then trying to get in as much fishing as she could get in.
So did she enjoy fishing a little herself?
Yeah.
She loved the sea. She told us that when she was down in Texas. She said, I would have liked to live my life on the sea.
I gave her a taste of it.
Right. We were walking on the beach, which the water seldom came up to, and while we were walking, of course she could not walk just so fast, here come this wave, clear up onto the beach, and she and I got stranded. George ran like everything again. And he was all embarrassed because he left her behind.
Clean up your Indiana.
Not about to get wet.
It was way up in the picnic area, and I bet it's a good 100 feet or more away from the water, you know, where the waves had been coming in. We'd walked all morning along that stretch. And all of a sudden, here we were just about to the car, and the water just came up and caught
Oops,
us.
there was Julia, right there. Let's move on to
One more
Frank.
thing, Mike,
Yes.
nobody mentioned, I don't think anything about her husband, his name was Wilson, and he was a railroad man, and that's why she came up in the summertime, she could always get a pass for her and the girls to come up and spend a month up here visiting the family.
Say the girls' names too.
And it was Ethel, Lucille, and
Florence.
Lawrence.
And Florence has been working at putting together that
She's done a marvelous job.
family tree.
Yeah.
Lots of research.
I got a copy of the book if any of you want to see it.
She has got an addition out now.
It's
Well, I
there.
wasn't aware of that. Well, she's been talking about it for, I figured probably by the year 2000, she'd have it somewhere else.
She's
Never
got,
sent us
I got a
anything.
copy of it. Oh, really?
Have you ever listened to it?
Yeah, that's what I said, if we thought of it, we should have brought that along, because
Because the
Go
facts.
back many, many
all
generations.
them questions.
He will probably get one of those. I'm sure if we call her, we could, get her to have some made in there for him.
Addition to that.
Yeah, I think so. I agree.
Just put some more together. Make it a project,
Yeah, I'm sure I want to.
I don't think
Spend a
all
lot
this
of
is
time.
good. All the talking and stuff was gonna come out, I don't feel the sound,
Not talking loud enough?
I don't think so.
Well, you all can, you're not doing too bad.
I'm not, but the rest are.
Yeah.
I can hardly hear them right here, those cameras have.
You're
a lot
deaf,
further.
Mark's debating on deciding whether he can hear or not.
That's,
Well,
You tell us
we'll
to
move
speak
out
up.
along, and, who were, Frank's parents?
Levi, father,
Ellen,
pardon?
You're right there.
her name was Ellen. wasn't it?
Ellen, and Ellen was my aunt.
Did, any of you know them or know anything about them?
no, was, you was the only one.
I was born before they passed away, but really, I guess I can't say as I really remember.
Mm-hmm.
They were, I'm 2 years younger than his, and they were both dead before I was born, so that tells
I
you.
can understand why you can't remember.
I can't remember some of the things what happened yesterday, but that's what happened 60 years ago.
Looking there, wait a minute now.
And, does anyone recall who Frank's grandparents were? Okay. So let's talk about,
That book too, I guess, in the book, probably.
we'll go to, Minnie. What was, Minnie's full name?
Wilhelmina?
Louise
Marie.
Marie.
Wilhelmina Louise Marie
Stroman.
Strongest.
Stroman.
Palmer.
And we heard where, when she was born. What was the date again, and where was she born?
May 16th.
She was born in Morrison County.
She was born
1903.
the same day as Beth was born.
And how many brothers and sisters did she have? Who are the brothers?
Carl was the oldest one, and he was a mail carrier for all his life, basically. He was married to Myrtle, and they had 2 children. Carl Jr. was pastor, and Ardith.
So they had 2 children, Carl and Ardith.
Then there was Fred, who would have been the next one, and he died in, during the First World War.
Was that in combat then, or?
Not in combat, he went into service and got the flu that they had going around. And died, I think they sent him back home before he died. But he died during the First World War.
Mm-hmm.
And then George,
You were gonna say something, Vern?
Yeah, he died in the hospital from an operation. He got an infection.
Oh, really?
Blood flows in the infection. But that's what happened to him. He went in for appendicitis operation and didn't come out.
How'd you think he had the flu?
well, he did. That's why they sent him home.
From the service.
Oh.
So there was Carl and Fred, and who was the next one?
George.
George.
George was, moved to North Dakota and was a teacher out there for many years, and he was state representative. North Dakota. He was also county superintendent of, can't remember the county anymore,
Oh, by
but it was by
Killdeer.
Killdeer. And then he was postmaster for many years at Killdeer, before he moving back to Minnesota on our home farm, and then finishing his career teaching in Pillager and retiring.
Who is his wife and he had children?
His wife's name was Esther. I was trying to think of,
Arlene,
well, no, I was trying to think of her
Maiden
maiden
name.
name.
She come from North
Started with B,
Dakota.
huh?
No more, I can't think of it.
Bauer?
Bauer.
They had two children, Wilbert and Arlene. And Wilbert has worked in Germany for most of his life, or not most of it, but the last several years.
He's back. now,
Arlene
isn't he?
is, maybe his back.
They're back in
Arlene
Minnesota.
lives up at Thief River Falls.
I think he's back in Bellingham or something.
Then there was Dora, married to Bob Jones. They lived in Lake Crystal. They didn't have any children. And,
They did it one day by,
well,
it's in the cemetery, she showed me.
Dora loved to fish, and garden. And Bob, his main occupation was shooting sheep, even that all his life.
And I might add that Dora liked to fish and garden. She did not like to put up hay, because she made sure when we were younger that we got out there to help put up hay when we got there, so that she didn't have to.
Later years, she really enjoyed coming up and visiting and
Yeah.
seeing the children and everybody though. And John,
Yeah, there's John, who's the next boss, actually John was older
he's older than Dora.
than Dora.
yeah.
John never got married, he stayed single all his life.
Who's going to get married?
Was engaged to get married, but never got that far. Died plowing one of his fields up in Barrel Perry.
Heart attack?
Yeah. And then the elder, he was the youngest brother, and he was engaged to get married, but at age, I believe it was 29, went into a Bryan store in Brainerd to buy a new suit to go to, I can't remember, it was some of the family's doings, birthday or something. Anyway, opened the door and fell through the door and died of a heart attack.
So there has been a little heart problem in the family, huh?
A little bit, yeah.
Quite a little.
Any other brothers and sisters?
Do you remember, Mark, of ever hearing of Willie down the southern part of the state? That's the oldest brother.
No.
He died and was buried in the southern part of the state. He was older than
William Strong.
Willie.
Yeah, that's right, there wasn't really.
I think I
Yeah, I
heard
knew
them
that.
talk about that, but it's been so long ago.
Just was slipping my mind.
And he was the oldest,
So there was an older brother. He must have died pretty young.
pretty young.
Uh,
I used to know where he was buried too, but I can't remember the town, but I can't remember that. Well, all of them.
I think it was done by St. James, if I'm not mistaken.
Strong and silent.
What was Minnie's parents' names, and could you tell me a little about them?
Just had it here.
Levi?
No.
Carl.
Carl was the
And
father,
her name was Wilhelmina too, wasn't
and
it?
her name was Wilhelmina, yeah.
Did any of you know them?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Tell me a little about Carl.
you do the count, because I don't remember.
Well, he was farming in Morrison County, farmed there all of his life, because he came from Germany and settled in there, homesteaded the farm, but they stayed on all our life. And he was a good person. Him and his wife, both. I remember I used to enjoy going out there, and she was the best cook I ever saw. She could bake pies that you wouldn't believe. But Carl, my grandfather, was a very generous person too. He was always very thoughtful. The only time I can remember he wasn't very thoughtful, he told me to drive his tractor one time, and his farm was pretty hilly, and I rode back and I broke both the caster wheels off the hay loader. He was not a happy camper, but needless to say, I got demoted from the driving tractor.
He always loved every time he came to our place. After the initial hello to me, it was back to the Chevy and the Ford argument, because my dad had a Chevy and he drove a Ford, and so every time he'd pick a little argument there with me on which car was the best. You know? So we had a steady feud there every time that we'd see each other for a minute until he'd got better of me, and then that was.
So it was decided which was better by the sounds of it.
Well, yeah, he always decided that. Yeah.
Lots of the time he brought the cream in from the farm, and the cream was across the street from us. Lots, good part of the time in the winter time, we're coming that way.
Yeah.
And he'd pick us up and throw us a quilt over the top of us and take it back out to the farm and back and forth.
But that was with horse and sled.
Yeah.
And
Did you have to go on the ferry?
That was before the big one.
other things you remember about Wilhelmina, other than she makes good pies and good cook?
She was a super cook.
She finally, after they sold the farm, Grandpa and the boys were all died, then she moved into Port Ripley and remodeled the old bee house there, and she lived in there until the time of her death.
Well, she basically lived with us for the last several years. She had cancer of the stomach, and she lived with us. I was born in 1935, and then she died in 1942. And for the last 2-3 years, we had taken part of her stomach out and then the balance out. She suffered a lot just before she died.
Well, I'd ask that you think about, yeah?
Elaine's got a comment here, but
I've been listening to you pronounce your grandmother's name, the way she didn't like it named. She didn't like it to be pronounced Wilhelmina. She said Wilhelmina.
Wilhelmina. I would like you to think, what was one of your favorite relatives on your mom and dad's side, and why? Now, the wives can jump in if you so desire, but you don't necessarily have to. Was there anyone in particular for you, Elaine?
I don't know, you better go out and go right down.
no particular one.
I guess probably picking one would probably George Stroming. On mother's side and on dad's side, probably Carl, because I knew him better. He liked to fish and he enjoyed taking us out fishing with him and some of these things. George would, when we lived in Fort Ripley, I had a white horse, and he was always trying to buy that white horse from me. Those little things, but
Play some good chicks on that.
John, mother's brother, who ran a grocery store in Fort Ripley, he knew I liked peanuts. And so he had taken a bag of peanuts and cracked all of them, took the peanuts out and filled them with navy beans, and pasted them back together. And I went through every one of those things, and laughed every time I opened one up.
Jokester,
He also brought me a box of walnuttos, but the only way I could have the walnuttos is if I put them all in my mouth at one time. Couldn't just have one at a time. Of course, once I got them all in there, then I couldn't open my mouth.
Do you know what walnuttos are?
They're like
They're
caramel.
like a little caramel, square caramel.
With nuts in them.
And he
I don't
thought that
think
was
they have
pretty
them
funny, and I
nowadays.
cried.
think they do either.
He said he got his mouth so full he couldn't open it or shut it.
He lived with us also during the times when we lived in Fort Ripley, or while he had the store, from the time we moved to Fort Ripley until,
This is John.
yes.
Yep.
So he had time to, in the evening, give those practical jokes, little kid.
Haven't you heard some of those before?
George, favorite relative and any reasons?
I guess on my mother's side again, I think I go with him with George Stroman, I guess. Mainly because once he moved back here from North Dakota, I helped him out the farm quite a little bit. I guess we sang in choir together. Just got to be a pretty good friend, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And on the dad's side, I guess probably Lawrence's. Because I knew I had, they lived up in Northeast when we first moved back into Brainerd. And we chummed up there with my brother, with the kids and with us. And later on, they moved out on Oak Street, before they moved and farmed again, before they moved up to Idaho. So we again chummed with my brother out there.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Vern?
I think my Uncle John probably was the first guy that ever took me fishing. He liked to fish on the Mississippi River, of course, we lived right in Mississippi. And I know that he took me up to his favorite spot a lot of times. And we had really good luck too. He was a good northern fisherman, and at that time we fished from shore. You had to cast. And I learned how to cast a rod and reel pretty quick fishing with John. And he was always really good. I mean, you came down to his store and he was always giving me some candy or something. I had to think about a thing that happened. I think it was George here. He went along with one time collecting. And they collected potatoes and they got a few chickens, and finally George asked John, he said, "Where do we get money?"
That reminded me, George hasn't quit collecting.
George could be over doing Uncle John, where do we get money? I thought we weren't collecting money. Yeah. Anyway, well, I was very close in later years with my Uncle Carl, and we fished a lot together. In fact, he took me out on the boat on Mille Lacs Lake when he guided out there a lot of times. We spent a lot of time together out there. We spent a lot of time fishing in the later years with him. I always remember one incident fishing with Carl. We had a fish house out on Mille Lacs Lake. And it was quiet, and we were sitting in the spear house, and apparently there wasn't much conversation. We talked about everything from A to Z, and all of a sudden, kerwham, the water flew right up 3 foot high in the fish house, and I was gone out of that fish house like a burglar in the dark. He said, "Boy, it's a good thing you knew where the door was." I couldn't imagine what happened. I thought my car fell through. A thousand things went through my mind. I got outside and looked around, and the car was sitting there, and everything was normal. And looked back in the fish house, and here's Carl leaning over by the door and laughing his head off. I said, "What was so funny anyway? What happened?" He said it was an iceberg came in, but it moved the ice about 8 foot closer to shore in one bang. And you could imagine the pressure that ice has got when it comes in. Apparently it wasn't frozen in the middle, and something broke loose on the other side and come across and hit where we were. But it shut that whole thing over. And he never forgot that.
You
He
didn't
says it's
either.
sure good thing Vern knew where that door was. He jumped up and took off. He said if it wasn't,
You would have made your own door,
I'd have made
huh?
my own door. Yeah, but we had a lot of enjoyment. We went a number of times up on the North Shore, up on the Canadian border fishing, and spent a lot of time with my Uncle Carl fishing. He was a good fisherman, and he really, really enjoyed fishing.
If you were to give a tip on fishing today and you were here, what do you think you would say?
About fishing?
Yeah.
Tell you throw all this new crap you got in your tackle box away,
Big
go back to a
paintball.
Prescott pike hook and he catches some fish.
He died in the
Did it
boat, he
cancel?
died fishing.
Yeah, he was in a boat fishing in Arizona when he passed away.
He also taught me a lesson about catching big fish with a small hook. We were fishing sunfish and I caught a northern. I didn't know that it was a northern at the time. And he said, Lloyd, you see your cane pole? And I thought he was going to pull a fish in, and I handed him the cane pole, and he threw it in the lake. And I had big tears and didn't think very much of my Uncle Carl at that time, and we just followed the cane pole until the fish got tired, and then we pulled the fish in. So, it's another little trick.
Yeah, he did the same trick with me. I had all kinds of conversations. But
Got the fish.
we got the fish after following it around a little lake up just west of Garrison there. I can't even find the lake anymore, but it sure had a lot of sunfish and northern in it.
Last year, I couldn't find that fish. I just find it up, I couldn't make it, and it goes, the old building was up.
Yeah.
I
You still walk?
Mine, maybe Ervin walked it. I walked it.
The road was right by it.
Well, I know. I don't.
Irv, what was your favorite?
Well, I guess probably that I can't really say that I had a favorite. I enjoyed being with Carl and different trips, and used to go down and stay with him down there, and he took us to the state fair. My first state fair was with Carl.
You would take me there.
And he would, he generally came up every 4th of July and bought a big bag of fireworks, and that was about that time about all we saw. Fireworks is what we had ourselves.
Oh, you're referring to Carl Strom.
Carl Stroming, yeah. And, of course, George, seemed like we always did things back together, especially after we moved back here, but even before that, we chummed with there. When he come back here, we'd go out there where we was close. And he'd take us around and show us different sights, and that was enjoyable. John, as you say, he run the store and kind of lived with us. But I also, when John bought his own farm, after he quit the store, I went out with him and helped him get his first crops put in and stuff out there on that farm. And there was only one thing I remember real plainly about Uncle John. He still had the store, was going out there and putting in crops. And every day for lunch, he brought cheese and crackers. And I got so I couldn't look at a piece of cheese no way after about so long with them cheese and crackers. But then when he passed away, unbeknown to me, he had left in his will that I receive all his fishing tackles. So.
I thought you were going to say all this cheese and crackers.
And of course, you heard the story earlier about me telling the story of going out with my Uncle Elder and killing a deer with a club, and so we used to go out and hunt and trap and stuff together. So, like I say, I can't really say that I had one favorite uncle or aunt.
So how did that deer get killed with a club?
It did get killed with a club. It had been wounded probably during deer season, or, well, I guess I shouldn't say during deer season, because I don't think we had a deer season in this area at that time yet. But it was wounded and we were out trapping. And at that time you carried a good old club with you to knock the animals in the head that you caught in the trap. And the dog got after this deer that was crippled, it had a broken leg, and run it past us, and my uncle saw it coming, so he stepped out to the side of the trail, and when it came through, he hit it in the head with the club and killed it, to get it out of its misery, actually. But I thought that was a big deal, my uncle out there killing the deer with a club, so I had to go tell that in school, and of course, they figured I was really stretching them right out there to the end with that.
Ervin told a couple tales prior to that.
At least one. I can't remember.
So consequently, when he told about the killing a deer with a club, nobody thought anything of it other than the fact that it was just another Pa Jones story, and I think in fact it probably was out of deer season, or
I know it was
legal.
out there,
So, but nobody ever said anything about them killing that deer. The game warden never showed up or anything, but it's just another story.
My Uncle John had a gal by the name of Laura Siegel working for him as a clerk at that time. And somebody had came in and told Laura about me telling that John and me had killed a deer. Or the elder and me had killed a deer. And she told John, she said, you know, she said, you probably better mention to Herb that he shouldn't be telling that story around before somebody takes him serious.
Phoebe, was there any of the relatives that were special for you?
I guess I had a lot of respect for and cared for all of them, but I suppose George Doming was probably the closest because he lived in Pillager at the same time I did, and when Irv was in service, he used to take me to church in Brainerd on Sunday, and Arlene was still home, so we chummed together and got to be good friends.
Leona,
Don't have a favorite one.
what was,
We all should have one favorite one.
One thing I'd like to mention
Our husbands.
that we should, that has been
He said
mentioned, that
He said it'll be
the Strowman family had a regular band of their own.
That's true.
a band of their
A
own?
band of their own. They all played except the youngest one, the elder, and my grandfather asked the music teacher that they used to go to Little Falls about him, why they couldn't get him to play anything. He was the only one of the whole family that never played, and he said, well, he's got a lot of music in him, he says, but I don't know, he says, I can't seem to get him out. But they would start playing music in there. They had a big sheep barn up in the second story, and they'd take, in the fall of the year before they put hay in the barn, they'd start playing, and all the neighbors would come over.
What kind of instruments you have?
Everything.
Violins
Violins,
or what?
drums, horns.
Uncle George always did the
Squeeze
memorial
box,
service in
accordion,
Pillager
Accordions.
at the Legion and all the.
Maybe twist on the string just a little bit. Maybe twist on the string just a little bit. Look at it, put some rosin on the bowl, wipe it across there again a couple of times, put it back in the box real nice, take it back in the bedroom and put it away. That was the extent of my dad's musical career.
What was your parents' anniversary date?
September 30th. They were married in 1925.
1925. And do you have any stories of how they met and how they ended up Mary?
You guys probably know more about that, right?
I can't remember how they met. I know that they were going together in, Cuyuna?
Or like Crosby
She worked
someplace.
in a
Yeah.
cafe in Crosby
Yeah.
up there.
I remember that Mother always used to
Just
say
telling
about
that.
when they were going together, that Carl was on with them one evening, they were gonna go someplace. And somebody said, turn to the right, and somebody else said, turn to the left, and they had one of those old stop and go lights that switched like they used to have in Minneapolis about 100 years ago. And Dad ran right over it, into the stop and go light. And somebody said, how come you did that? And he said, I don't know what the heck they had in the middle of the street for anyway. But they had to fix the stop and go light after Dad got through with it. I don't know how they met. Probably at a pie social.
Pie social.
I didn't know it.
And they ever say anything about what characteristics in each other drew them to each other?
No, I guess they never divulged that.
Sure. Where did they first live?
When they first got married?
Yeah, when they first got married.
On the Gergen farm, where I was born.
Crow County then.
Where did they go from there?
10 miles down the road.
Bird was born. Well, I think we were all born in a different farm.
Yeah.
it was.
We got
They
time out
moved,
here.
Narrow over Morrison County, go over by, where's Berlin farm?
We're getting
That's
rough.
when they was born. So I was born
From there, they
I
were,
was born over there.
So from they had you, and they moved and had Irv. And then did they move and have George?
Yeah, Daggett Brook is right.
And
And so where were you born?
Daggett Brook.
Daggett Brook. And did they move then to have you, Lloyd?
Did they move again to Evans?
Yeah.
Sort of interesting.
Did they figure out that that's how it worked?
I think so, that was the cause.
It's a good thing they should move it.
He was born on the art place. No, he wasn't born on the art place. He was born, actually, and I can't remember the neighbors. Don, the doing, or not the doing, but another road over there. About 2 miles down there, I can't remember. Do you remember who that was, where his mom lived?
You mean, what farm it was actually? Okay.
They
We
had-
lived on the art place.
You lived on the
They had to leave home to get you.
Yeah. Then about a month after I was born, we only lived there for, well, I understand, a month. And then we,
Now that was where?
it was in Morrison County, apparently,
Oh, where they had you.
where I was born.
Where we lived was in Crow County, but he was born about 100 feet to the south in Morrison County.
Something like that. Then about a month later, we moved to Fort River. And then that was in 1935, and then in 1945, there was no more children in that period of time, so they figured they just moved to Rain.
Well, tell me a little about the property that they had and the actual house at Fort Ripley.
Well, the actual house they had at Fort Ripley was built by Carl Stroming.
Oh, is that right?
In fact, Carl Stroming owned the house that we lived in Fort Ripley, and we rented from him, and my folks rented from him. After we moved, he sold it then, but as long as we stayed there, he rented it. Carl had originally been a mail carrier in Fort Ripley, and then he transferred down to Watertown, Minnesota. And that's when after he transferred down there, then we moved to Fort Ripley off of the farm, and my dad started trucking and hauling cattle. And that's where we lived until we quit hauling cattle and we moved to Brainerd. But we didn't own the property at Fort Ripley.
Just rented it
Just
from,
rented it.
from John, you say?
No, from Carl.
From Carl.
But John lived with us. He had the store there for us.
And you moved to Brainerd in
45.
45. And what led your family to move to Brainerd?
I guess the freight train hit the truck, I guess.
Freight train.
Well, Dad's back got so bad he couldn't stand to drive the truck. He was hauling, we haul livestock to South St. Paul. The trucking just got his back so he couldn't, he drove the truck to South St. Paul, and he was later for a week before he get back going again.
Well, actually, Dad had went to Brainerd and was selling cars with another Chrysler car day franchise there. And Chrysler people or Dodge people had kind of promised my dad if he'd get a building that they'd give him the Dodge and Plymouth franchise. That's when my dad started looking for a building to buy. Purchased the building, but he never got the Dodge and Plymouth franchise. So
They sort of reneged on it, eh?
yeah. So after we was there, then we took on John Deere tractor line or John Deere implement line. Took on the Rio truck line, the Willis car line, and used cars before anything.
So you had a couple different lines, huh?
Well, we had those mostly all, you know, all in conjunction with each other.
Would enjoy hearing especially a happy memory from your childhood, but doesn't necessarily have to be happy, but just something, and maybe to give a point of reference, you can think about the time at Fort Ripley, but it doesn't have to be at Fort Ripley.
I guess in my case, it wasn't Fort Ripley, it was Brainerd. Being the youngest child, seemed like Vern and Ervin and George and the folks got in a lot more of the work, and I got in a lot more of the play, and most of my play was baseball. And when we moved to Brainerd, right out of the box, I started playing baseball. They had 4 teams in town, and then at some point in the year, they would choose an all-star team. And I always was on that all-star team, and we would go out to other towns, and I was really proud of that.
George?
I can't think of anything offhand.
We'll come back to you. Vern?
I had so many memories, I can't remember them all. But I remember when I was going to high school, it was during World War II, and you couldn't hire anybody for love nor money. And Dad would load the truck up and send me to South St. Paul at 11 o'clock at night, and I'd get back to Little Falls. I went to high school in Little Falls in time to take a shower and hit the classes. And I know that there for a while I thought we were really busy. I was making a trip from here every other night. And when I got study hour after our lunch at noon, I'd go up to study hall and say, study night, take a nap. And the teacher, she'd wake me up, and finally one day she said, how come you're always sleeping? She said, I don't understand. Every noon, right after noon, you're always sleeping. She said, what? Don't you sleep at night? And I said, it's pretty hard to sleep when you're driving a truck to South St. Paul. And she said, what do you mean driving a truck to South St. Paul? And I said, well, since I've been left school, yesterday afternoon, I've been to South St. Paul to load cattle, and she says, you're fibbing. And I said, well, walk out by the window. That morning I had parked the truck right outside the study hall window. And she walked over and she said, put your head back down on the book, and when the bell rings, I'll wake you up to go to your next class. We got along real good after that. It wasn't any smell, Phoebe. Part of Dad's instructions, when you got done loading, you took the truck over.
those cows.
You bet. You took the truck over to where they washed the trucks. You had a hose there that you wanted to have both feet on the planet on the. And you washed the truck out, scrubbed that baby up. You come home with any of that stuff hanging out the boards. Could be out there with a.
So it was all right to park it by the school.
Oh, they never smelt the truck, I'll tell you that. Yeah, it was all cleaned up, washed, got washed sometimes every day. Oh, yeah, big hoses, almost like fire hoses that you use. You want, when you turn it on, you want to be ready, because if you weren't, you'd be on the floor.
Breach your feet.
I remember that quite a bit.
Well, I guess I have memorable times from Fort Ripley and from Brainerd. We had a ski hill that we used to call the Famous, just east of Fort Ripley there, that all the kids in Fort Ripley used to go slide down it with a sled or ski down it. Of course, we was never satisfied. We always had to build a ski jump in the middle of it so that we had a jump. And of course, then after we got the ski jump built, if we didn't go fast enough on skis or far enough, then we took the sled or toboggan down it so we'd go farther. We used to have a lot of fun there. We also lived right across from the creamery, and they had a lot of pigs, but they also flooded the area down there so the pigs had something to drink. In the winter time, well, that area they flooded down there was, we'd use it for a skating rink. And of course, putting there every day when they was churning and washing the churns and everything, that got re-flooded, so we always had new ice. So we had a built-in skate rink right across the street from us all winter long all the time, so we did a lot of that. Also did a lot of fishing and hunting when we was in Fort Ripley. Probably one of the not so memorable times was a hunting trip that we took one Sunday in Fort Ripley. When I went out with a single barrel shotgun and swung a little too far around to get a pheasant, and the stock slipped off of my shoulder, and the hammer caught me in the mouth and tore my mouth wide open. But,
That's all right.
That was a week before you got made the kids you about the deer.
Well, when the doctor was sewing it back up, the doctor got it all done sewing it back up, and my dad looked at him and he said, "You sure you put in enough stitches?"
George, you come up with a memorable childhood?
I guess like pretty much like Irv said, as far as the hunting and fishing we did, especially in the river down there, I guess, in Fort Ripley. We used to take it about a mile north of town there by the bridge, and we did a lot of fishing there. How long like northern bass.
George's long list when we was flying up over top of Mom and Fort Ripley when we went up to our first plane ride.
I remember an incident, George probably may recall. This was after we moved to Brainerd. It's sort of hard to picture this, but we lived upstairs in the garage, and we rented an area next to the garage to what they called the North American Creamy Company, and they were a distributor of pop. Well, at the end of the hall was where our bathroom was at, and we had a little window at the end of the bathroom, and right below that is where they stored their pop. And of course, that's nice.
Still fishing.
Yeah, we were still fishing. And the nice, innocent children that you have noticed so far? Everybody's been quite.
As your father
Good.
and uncles?
We would take our rods and reels and make a little hoop in the line. And then we'd run it down and put it over the bottle of pop and give her a jerk and pull the pop up. And this worked quite well. I'm sure that they always wonder downstairs why some cases would come up with 23 bottles instead of 24, but we got too big a loop in our line, and it went over 2 bottles. And so we pulled it, then the 2 bottles came together and up came the case, part ways. And down, and the line broke, and down went the case. I think it was about 9 o'clock the next day. It was something like clippity-clap, clippity-clap, clippity-clap. My dad had found out. He was talking to a couple of the boys that he thought might be doing that. He wasn't saying too much, he was more active.
More action, huh?
Oh, that's a good little single as machines do.
How would you describe what family life was like just in general, living in Frank and Minnie's home?
I guess to begin with, as far as I recall, at least in my earlier years, Dad was awful busy. He was always working. He was hauling cattle, or when we moved to Brainerd, he was always working. And as I got older, although I moved from living with the folks at 18, it seemed like Dad did slow down some at the latter years. Mother helped Dad a lot when possible, and she worked in the garage there at Brainerd, but it seemed like she always had time to care for us if we had a problem, or she always had an ear to hear and a shoulder to lean on. So that was sort of what I remember.
Other general impressions of
Well, there's one thing about it. My dad made one practice after they started opening deer season in the central part of Minnesota.
And pheasant season.
Yes, and pheasant season. That pheasant season and deer season was 2 times a year that Frank Palmer didn't work. We generally made a trip at least for a weekend pheasant hunting, and when deer season came, regardless of whether he was trucking cattle or whether it was in the garage, the other people could work if they wanted to, mechanics in the garage, or if one of the truck drivers wanted to go on to South St. Paul on a run, that was fine, but Frank Palmer and the rest of us went deer hunting or pheasant hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And that,
Assignment on the door.
that was true right through till he died, I guess.
Last year he did, Lloyd was in Washington. Mom and Dad and Elaine and Mary went out there, went elk hunting. And there was a lot. He got a 5 point and I got a spike. And we come back the first part of December and he died the 11th of January. So we went out there and he enjoyed himself.
Yeah, Dad liked to fish real well, and he particularly liked to fish in the wintertime, spear fish in a fish house. And when I used to go out a lot, got together, spear and fish. And, in the later years, he had a fish house, and so did I. But I can remember he used to we had burnt wood. He'd get the fire going like crazy, and then of course the fish would be coming, and he'd forget to shut the damper off, and pretty soon Dad would come out of there with sweat running off the end of his nose, like he'd been in a fin bath. But he really enjoyed fishing. I mean, particularly in the wintertime. I think he enjoyed probably speared fish more than he did catching one with the line. One thing I was gonna mention, I saved Ervin's life one time and he never told anybody about that.
Well,
He fell in the water tank out at the farm and of course I ran over, saw him fall in, grabbed him by the legs and jerked him out of the water tank, and of course he was crying and mother thought I'd beat up on him or done something, so I got a spanking because I saved his life.
Oh.
How old was Irv then?
Well, not very old, probably 3-4 years old.
I think that was just after he told me that in order to grow, I had to eat a lot of salt.
Vern wouldn't have done that, would have he?
No.
I certainly don't think that it would be
he hasn't quit yet.
fair to Dad not to mention what a great deer hunter he was.
Well,
He was, many times, he shot, if there was 10 hunters, he would shoot more than half the deer that was killed to fill out the limit. There was a couple of years in 1940 and 41 that, what was the numbers? I can't even remember anymore. I think he shot 16 deer one year or 12 another year or something like that.
Shot a lot of deer. He was an excellent shot.
Was it partly because he was so quiet in the woods also?
You could
He could
put
sneak
up
up on
behind you,
anything.
you'd never know he was there.
You could walk through the woods like an Indian, Bird always says.
Sneak up on the
So
deer that way
quiet.
almost.
Yeah, he shot a lot of deer right in his middle.
He liked to go out and just wander through the woods until he got on the track and found them.
Yeah, he'd track him right down to their, wherever they were. If they were laying down or standing up, he'd sneak right up to them.
Then when Carl Palmer, that's when I was probably maybe 5 years old, saw a deer, and there wasn't very many deer ever went through the southern part of the state at that time, but we lived east of, south and east of Brainerd out there. But Carl saw a deer track that came through out of the swamp. So Dad and Carl grabbed their rifles and they left the first thing in the morning. They was going to track that deer down. They tracked it all day long. And first one to track it for a while, and then the other one to try to get ahead of it, and then the other one to do it. Finally, Carl saw it. He missed. And they'd been tracking it for so long, they hadn't really paid any attention to where they was at. But they'd actually traveled about 15 miles. And so after he missed it and the deer was gone, it was getting close to dark, when they came up, they got on the road. And of course, I had already had quite a lot of snow. Carl finally got back to the house after hiking around the road, him and Dad all the way back. They didn't get back there until pretty late. But I remember Carl making a remark that he was built for the highway. It wasn't that snow that he was made for.
I thought that Herb was going to tell about the day they were fairly young at the time when they were living over in Morrison County across where Camp Ripley is now. The boys went out one day and they chased this deer around and around and finally ran the pasture, so they, I don't know if they ever did or not, but they came back and told their dad, they said, well, they wanted to know if they got it. They said, no, we got it in the pasture, we're going to go out tomorrow morning and get it. We shut the gate, so it couldn't get out. Of course, their dad told them, he said, boy, of all the things I've told you about hunting deer, do you think you're going to keep that in the fence? Yeah, they are. I think the boys knew better than they would tell their dad. See what kind of reaction they would get from that. They got a reaction, I'm sure.
Yeah. Other things that made your dad a good deer hunter?
A lot of experience.
I know in the area, you put over a piece of woods and Either owned it or.
Patience.
He used to be able to, we'd go out, a lot of times we would drive I'm driving a car now, for some time after, when we first started hunting. And we'd see where a deer crossed the road, and he would almost be able to tell you where that deer was gonna come out on the other end of the woods. He had hunted that area so long and knew their patterns, and somebody'd get on the trail and you'd send a couple other guys around on the other end where the deer was gonna come out.
You didn't hunt deer like we hunt deer now. You hunted deer, not waiting for them.
Well, back in those days, there wasn't very many hunters. So you could do that. Today, if you got on a deer's track before you brought it on the other end of the woods,
Some
since I was a
people
hunter,
would
would
have
have shot
shot
it.
it,
Either shot it or you.
Yeah, it was,
But I'm not so sure which is the better way to hunt. They both certainly have their good and bad points. I think you had a lot more camaraderie when we made the drives and that type of thing than going on a stand. But I think as far as deer camp versus not a deer camp, there's a lot to be said about a deer camp. I thought so many times Dad would have really enjoyed that. We could have sat down and shot the bull like we do up at deer camp and fried up a little venison, played a little cards, because he liked to play cards too.
He likes to play cards. What kind of cards
Sure
did
took him a long
did
time
he
to
like
turn
to?
one over.
$500 was his game and smear.
Then he got into canasta for a while.
Played 500 and you played the wrong card. You came in over the table.
He liked to play Parcheesi with his grandkids.
Parcheesi.
Parcheesi and checkers.
Mhm.
He was always so good about coming around and picking up all the little girls and taking them to choir on Wednesday night.
Or to Deerwood.
I remember he used to take them so they could sing in this little cherub choir when they were little.
Well, I have been known to gamble from time to time a little bit. And I think my father taught me that.
No. You wouldn't have done anything like that.
He taught you too much.
We played checkers. And if I could have lost my shorts, I think he'd taken them too. He beat me every time we played for my comb and my hanky and my shirt, and never beat him.
So you never beat him in checkers, huh?
I wouldn't say I never beat him, but I think when I did, it was because he let me.
What was he like as a father? Was he strict or lenient?
You didn't really have much doubt in your mind as to what his thoughts were. It wasn't, this is my feeling, maybe, and George and Ervin Vern have a different feeling, but I always felt that you knew when Dad was kidding, and you also knew when he was serious. He didn't give out very many spankings, but when you got one, it was quite a while before he forgot it. But he was fair.
He never swore. It was sardine, but you
Yeah.
never heard him swear, ever.
Or son of a biscuit.
Yeah.
Mostly sardine.
Oh, sardine.
What, for each of you, what was a characteristic that you especially liked about your father, Frank? And maybe go around the gun here for that.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, and I just mentioned, I think first it was fair. And secondly, he just, you say, he joked from time to time, we had a lot of fun, but I never had any doubt in my mind when Dad told me to do something, and I knew that that was to be done. It wasn't, and I think that this is so many times, and I think back of raising you and Todd and Diana, maybe I wasn't that way enough. I don't know what your thoughts were. Well, maybe I joked when maybe they thought I was joking when I wasn't. But I guess the other part was that Dad was very fair, and although in a lot of cases we didn't have a lot of money, he was fair to everybody with what he had. So it was a good relationship.
Judy, something you liked about Frank?
Well, the thing I always thought is that I wished he would have talked a little louder, because I never heard half of anything he ever said. And I think I missed a lot. He was just so soft-spoken.
Especially in the later years when he didn't feel well, I think he had a tendency to talk softer.
And then I told Minnie that one time, and she says, "Why didn't you ever say that years ago?" I guess that was after Frank had passed away. She says, because she says, I never heard him half the time either. He was a good person.
George?
Yeah, I guess probably that, being there in business with him for quite a number of years, working together with him, I guess, until he died. Got to know him pretty well. Like Lloyd said, as far as mine is concerned, we, at that time, a lot of time it was a little short, but he did anything he could do to get someplace to keep us going. And he never would cheat anybody out of a nickel if he had something coming. But he might have to duck him for a day or two to get money to the bank or get to the bank to get some from him, but he would get it.
Vern, characteristic?
I think Lloyd summed it up there pretty well as far as, you know, I remember. Dad was always fair and treated everyone well. I can remember when I was trucking him a lot, he could eat a meal in half the time that I could. I mean, he'd sit down at the counter at a truck stop, and I just barely started eating, and he, "Are you ready to go?" And I looked, and his plate's empty. I thought, "Man, what did you do with it all, Dad?" "Yeah," he said, "you can't make any money sitting here. You got to get on the road." But I guess Dad was enjoyable. Whether it was working with him or honeymoon or whatever you were doing, it was always fun to be around him.
Thanks. Herb?
Yeah, I think they've probably pretty much summed up what he was like. I think we all enjoyed being with him, working with him. Probably what he taught us all during the time we was able to be with him has helped us all continue through life and enjoy life and do the things we've been able to do.
Phoebe?
He was always just a real good buddy to me. I enjoyed hunting with him. I quit hunting pretty much after he died too. I don't know, I guess I got too old too, but I really did enjoy being out with everybody hunting when he was with too. I remember the last year we went, and he really had a hard time getting through the woods. In fact, he got so tired he would lay down in the snow and rest, and then get up and go some more, but he wouldn't quit. He had a good time. But he was always there to listen if you had a problem.
Us went up on what the heck is that? Vermilion, and went out on the island for a picnic.
We left the kids with Hazel. Harold wasn't along. We left the kids with Hazel and Harold.
They were with us.
No, they weren't.
At the time we got half the
No,
stuff.
Bob and Bea were with us, but, and I can't remember who else, but the kids were with Hazel and Harold.
We
because I know she thought we were never coming back. She thought we were all drowned.
Well, part of us got on the island, see, we're gonna have picnic lunch out on this island.
Maybe Schwimmer and Netta was with us too.
Part of us got on the island.
That must have been cool,
Yeah.
Well, you know, and I can't remember which place the food was, but
Part of us were under the boat.
part of us were under the boat on the island because it just okay, black clouds came up like that, and the wind was blowing, you couldn't know where the heck ever got back to the shore, and it just poured like hell. We sat out there putting her all day,
Never
4th
did
of
get
July.
fish, it was just awful.
Well, the strange part of this deal was that the difference of looking north and south.
Mm-hmm.
Because you look back, like you say, you would have thought it was midnight. It was that black, and you look ahead, the sun is shining just as pretty as can be.
It was just like it was a purple.
Yeah.
I only saw the sky like that one time, it's when we flew into Florida, whenever we were going down to Caribbean that time. And pilot or whatever announces said, we've got to get down in 5 minutes or we're not gonna get down. I don't know, I don't wanna be here anyway, you know? And on one side of the airplane, it was just pitch black, on the other side the sun was shining. But by the time we got down, it was just like black thunder.
I'm gonna share just a few more things as far as Frank is concerned. Do you remember any pastimes or hobbies that he had? Things that were important to him that he enjoyed doing?
Yes.
Fishing and hunting.
Playing cards.
And playing cards. And was there any one or individuals in particular that he really enjoyed as friends that he spent time with?
I guess Carl, probably his brother, he spent a lot of time with him, where he's fishing and hunting.
Levi, and what's her name? Larson. Larson.
Levi Larson.
No, Leonard Larson.
Leonard.
Leonard.
Yeah.
I saw
Leonard
them,
and Alice?
I saw them about a year ago.
Still alive.
Yeah, they are.
Bill Benson was another one that Dad spent quite a lot of time with, the bachelor out in Real Prairie there.
Any other special memories that you had of your dad that's worth mentioning at this time? Not,
That we haven't mentioned.
let's talk about your mom for a while. What was she like as a mom in your home growing up?
Well, I'm sure that probably you wouldn't be in the ministry if it wasn't for her. And I say that because she was the one that saw that we got to church.
What part did church play in your growing up, in your childhood?
We went to church just about every Sunday. We prayed generally at meals and had our evening prayer. It wasn't something that was a real big part of life, but it was certainly a part of our life.
She played the organ in church. All the time.
And she taught Sunday school
Yeah.
for years.
Well, Dad also, even though he maybe didn't attend all the time, made sure that we were, so we could go to church and we were to go to church. Both Mom and Dad was pretty strict as far as that we attended Sunday school and church when we could, and even after we were married and the kids was going to Sunday school, he used to come around and pick up the girls and take them to Sunday school in the morning to make sure that they got there and stuff. But so was Mom. Mom was
Mom was sick a lot, I remember that. From the time that we lived in Fort Ripley, it wasn't anything unusual to see her passed out on the floor. She had a lot of heart problems and maybe more high blood pressure than we thought she had, or whatever. We knew she had awful high blood pressure when she died, or before she died, but if this was what caused it, well, I don't know. But she did have a lot of pain through her life.
What they knew about a lot of these things at that time, they just didn't know what they do now, you know, as far as medications to give them for high blood pressure and
She had a green thumb like nobody I ever knew. She enjoyed her plants and
Beautiful plants.
her gardens more than anyone I ever knew.
George and I helped take care of them one time, and it about took a whole day just to water
Just to
them.
water. Mhm.
George had one plant though that kept dying, and the more water he could give him, the more
You drowned them to
the
death?
worse it looked, the more he poured onto it, and he drowned it.
I didn't drown it, it's only that you're supposed to do that.
Well, you told me if you
What
drowned
was
it.
it? A prayer plant that curled up with leaves at night?
But it did, and it took many, many buckets of water to water all those plants out on the roof, out in the back shop, in the bedrooms, in the living room, in the dining room, in the kitchen.
Went to bed at night.
A long time,
So she enjoyed having that.
very
plants
much,
around.
and she was good at it.
Yeah.
It was, she put most greenhouses to shame with the amount of plants and the quality of the plants.
Was that right?
Yeah, and Dad enjoyed it. You get that old water for radiator and he'd go right to watering flowers.
Did she have a lot of flowers versus just a greenery, or was it a
Both.
lot of mixture?
Flowers.
A lot of fern and
The
just
big
about
ferns
everything.
were what I first remember when I first went there the first time, was her great big Boston ferns.
Christmas cactus or water maples. Yeah.
If one little branch broke off in the plant, she'd put it in a pot and get it start rooting and have another plant. She'd just keep that up, and she had one great big flowering maple tree, wasn't it? Flowering
Downstairs.
downstairs, and she gave many a slips to the customers when they came in. Often from that, they all wanted to know where she
Every once
could
in a
maybe
while, you
find
still
them.
run into somebody that say, I got a piece of that plant from your mother-in-law.
That's the way.
Yeah, she enjoyed the garden too, before we moved to Green, which was a good She always had a good garden.
She's had a garden down there by the river quite a bit after you moved to
Yeah,
Brainerd.
down the river. She used to walk all the way down the river, but she also,
How far was the river away from?
I'd say 3-4 miles. She'd
One
walk-
time she made me drive her in the Model A and I didn't know how to drive that either.
You mean you
Walk
went
all the way down
church?
there,
Jerk, jerk, jerk.
go to her garden, and walk all the way back.
I can't remember the conversation once I was
We
down
got there.
reading in that garden by the river, and there was always just a million mosquitoes down there, which was right. Can't remember just exactly what I said, but something to the extent that I thought the mosquitoes thought I was their god, because they sure hung around me a lot. I was probably 10 or 11 years old.
Good host, Wade. He was a good host,
Yeah.
too.
Outside of her green thumb, were there other hobbies or interests or things that were important
She
to their
loved to
interest?
play her piano.
Yeah.
Sneak up the back stairs when she wasn't knowing you around and she'd be playing and singing. It was fun to sit
She'd
and listen to her.
sing also?
She sang very well.
Yeah, she was the piano player in their band.
Oh,
So those years.
Yeah, she could recorded the piano.
I suppose because there were no daughters, I guess it's probably somewhat normal for boys to be closer to their father than their mother, in some cases at least. maybe we spent more time hunting and fishing and that type of thing with Dad than we did with Mother, because Mother never hunted.
I think she always
She-
felt
well,
like
she
you were
hunted some
really
with
close
pheasants,
to her
she-
though. She always felt like she was very close to all of you.
Oh, yeah, there was not a question about that, but I think we spent more time with
And we
Dad.
probably never would have went pheasant hunting if it hadn't been for her either, because she had her 410.
Shoot 'em, boys, shoot 'em.
Shoot 'em.
There he goes, the rooster shit.
She went, with her 410.
But she wasn't satisfied unless all four boys went hunting too.
We had some good times doing that.
Were there any individuals that she was especially close to as far as friends or anything that she spent time with?
It was pretty much the same. They had their mutual friends, that's my life.
She liked Ethel Fosdick a lot, who was John's fiancée.
Yeah.
Isn't that who lived up in?
Lillian Jedner.
Lillian.
As far as a characteristic or something that you especially remember in your mom, or Minnie, what comes to your mind as far as something that you especially liked? Start with Elaine.
She loved her grandchildren and she and I got along great. We went to Washington to see Mark and Judy and stopped in Great Falls to see Darla. We had a real good trip.
That was before John was born.
No, that was,
John was there too.
because we took him to a doctor while we were there getting ready.
Judy,
That's me by for now. I think a little while.
welcome back. Lloyd?
I guess, you know, one of the things that I might have had shared with Mom more than George and Ervin and Vern, again, because I was the baby of the family, they were doing something else, maybe working in the shop or whatever, but I remember going and doing errands for Mom a lot. She'd send me to the grocery store, and she'd say, how much is it gonna cost? And I'd try to figure as close as I could, and then, of course, I'd add a little bit. And she'd never ask for the change back. That isn't, it's a memory that, but I mean, that's one of the things that she was giving, a giving person. She seemed like she always looked to give more than receive.
George?
I guess probably the biggest thing, I guess, or one of the big things is we sang a lot together. Me and she played the piano, and I was in the choir. We'd sing a lot together. Then Uncle George would come up, and a lot of times the three of us would get together. Do that, and also with her gardening and her flowers, and trimming some of that, and she'd show me how to, at that time, how they had so many different chemicals to make the flowers turn different colors, and being around for that many years.
She put sulfur in her hydrangeas to make them bloom
Yeah.
different colors,
Yeah.
didn't she? Oh, Brenda, we could do that.
That sure got pretty. We had that big,
I couldn't
Those
remember
big
what it
hydrangeas.
was.
Remember
she had them in that big separator bowl.
Well, a hydrangea was the big thing that's in the,
Vern?
Well, as I recall, Mara was always, like I said, a very giving person. Certainly, I thought that she always gave a lot more than I was able to give back to her, you know. And she'd always tell me if Dad was unhappy or something about something I might have done, so that,
The peacemaker.
Yeah, she was.
So,
Yeah,
kept things,
kept things together and going smoothly. Yeah, she was always, if somebody in the family was having a problem with somebody else, she was always there to kind of mend up the ways, you know, so that it wouldn't be a big problem.
didn't allow little things get to be big things, huh?
Yeah. Exactly. She was, that kind of a mom. She was a very good cook too.
Was there anything in particular that comes to your mind that you really liked that your mom made?
Oh. She could bake real well, I know that. You could make the bread or pie or cake.
Remember she baked a pie one time?
Yeah, I was just gonna
Oh, I remember that one.
Tell about it.
Tell about it.
We had, every fall, we would get a boxcar load of coal in and put it in the basement, and this was always a job that nobody liked, and anyway, she had made pie, and somehow she had got her salt and sugar bowls mixed up, and so when she made the pie, and rather than putting sugar into it, she put salt into it. Vern had mentioned that Dad was a pretty fast eater, and so he had finished before everybody else, and he took a piece of the pie and never said a word. I think it was George that was the next one, as I recall, I'm not sure though. Whoever it was that took that first bite after Dad had taken a bite, everybody knew that there was something wrong with the pie then.
But Frank never let on that there was something wrong with it.
Wasn't there something said that whoever said anything about the pie, they have to do the dishes or something on that order?
I don't know
I
about
thought
that.
there was some little thing there. They didn't tell anybody. That was salty.
He wasn't about to do the dishes, that was
Irv, characteristic you liked about your mom?
Well, I guess just that she was loving and kind and always, like the rest of them say, looked out for you. If she thought you were had a problem with Dad or somebody, well, she always tried to prevent that so that it didn't get worse. And she always tried to guide us to not get in trouble elsewhere either, so. That's probably the most memories I have of her is watching out for you.
So there was the possibility that you four young gentlemen at that time had the possibility of going places or doing things that you shouldn't do? Is that what you're saying, Irv?
That was never under our mind. More than we could get by with.
Was there anything that any of the four of you did that embarrassed your mom or put her to partial shame?
Which time?
Which time, huh?
Questions.
You said you wanted a little fire in there.
one thing that comes to my mind, and I probably shouldn't even tell about this, but Irv and I were down, I was supposed to take care of Irv so he didn't get in trouble. We went down to the dance, and the dance hall was only a block away. And I don't know, he got away from me somehow or another, and when I found out later, some of the boys at work, they had pawned their researchers and they picked up a bottle of wine. And I think Irv must have drank more than his quarters with anyway, so. Anyway, I finally caught up to him over at the restaurant, and he tore a hole in his Easter suit, I remember that. And he wasn't in very good shape. And Bill Reed, a friend of mine, we walked him around the block about 3 times, and I said, well, can you get home, can you get through the house okay without any problem? Oh yeah, no problem. We hadn't got hardly in the house, and he ran into a chair and tipped that over, and Mom was out of bed to second. You boys been drinking? And no, I'm nothing like that. Why would we do anything like that? So I got him in the bedroom and I sat him down on the edge of the bed, I remember that. And I said, can you take off your shoes alone? Yeah. Fell flat on his face right on the floor and it sounded like the whole house caved in. And mother came in the bedroom anyway and she
Are his children in the
picked her up and set him back on the bed. And continued to tell me, I thought you were gonna take care of it. What happened? What's the matter with you? You've been drinking? I said, I don't know. I guess I really don't know. I knew what the trouble was, but I couldn't very well tell her. So she clipped him a couple alongside the head and he said, flopped around. And she left and I covered him up and next morning I was telling him before we went up to breakfast that I was afraid we were probably both in trouble, both grounded, which we were. So, anyway, come out and there wasn't a whole lot said about him or about that party, but she reminded me the following Saturday night that we weren't going to the dance anymore. That we were grounded.
The jig was up.
And the jig was off, that's right. I remember he said, oh yeah, I can do it. When he fell off the bed,
He's still
in
there.
trouble now. Could have wrung his neck or a nipple.
I think you and I was involved in a little burning of some, at least I was. I was cooking something, or I can't remember specifically what it was, but I left the pan on. I left the fire on and it burnt the pan up. She just got a new coffee pot or something. That's when we lived in Brainerd, and so we got to get rid of the evidence. So I took the pan out and we went up on the roof there and dropped it in between the two buildings. It must have been, I don't know, 6, 7 years later. One day she looked down there and saw me.
I think that was that new stove she bought, had that deep dish to put down inside.
Oh, maybe it was, I can't remember.
Burn.
But it was a good thing she found it 6, 7 years later. Because, of course, none of us knew what happened to it. It just disappeared. But after 6, 7 years, she'd cooled off pretty much for that
It's
thing.
kinda nice to know that you burn things too.
Well, that's when I was a kid.
I better now.
Yeah.
What about the time your mother was looking for you all on the ground and you were flying up above her?
Yeah.
Oh.
And I was delivering papers one time when I was a kid on birthday at an airplane. Mom and Dad were gonna go someplace and the rest of the family and I was delivering papers and $100 overtime. We drove around the paper out about 4 times and couldn't find me in here. I went down to this guy's place. Well, he was the last guy on my paper out, and if he wasn't busy, a lot of times I get down there, he'd take me up for a plane ride. So all of a sudden, here I'm bicycling back up the highway, and here comes Dad. Where you been? Delivering papers, of course, you know. But somewhere along the line after that, we were in the truck going someplace, and yeah, he said, "Where the heck were you?" Well, Mom never liked any, you couldn't get her in an airplane. I don't care how big or how small it was. And she thought anybody got in when I was crazy. And I told Dad, I said I was with Eitan in his airplane. Boy, baby, better not tell your mom about that. He never told her that either. She knew to her dying day that that's where the heck Vern was at up there. If she'd have found out that I was up flying around in an airplane, we were going to a party or going someplace, and she was pretty upset that they couldn't find me. So I don't know, how come you could have missed me? I was just delivering papers. I think I had 15 customers at that time.
Airmail.
Yeah.
We just drove by his house today.
You what?
We just drove by Ike's house.
Oh, exactly.
Any other things that you did to bring shame or dishonor to your mother's name?
What's that now?
Beyond that, Mark, I couldn't think of a thing.
You don't wanna
We've
hear.
done very well. There were a few other things we may have done, she never knew about. We may have.
I believe we have the
They were her good little boys. They wouldn't let her know about the other things.
Yep, church every Sunday and behaved ourselves during the week.
it's getting thick in here.
I know
You
you
got-
drafted the paper.
We got Phoebe and Leona as far as just a characteristic of many that you like?
I always thought she had a wonderful sense of humor, all these things that they did, when she found out about it later, she could usually laugh about. She really did have a good sense of humor. She was a good mother-in-law, I guess.
Leona?
We always got along, and people share her gardening and flowers, plants.
She took care of your little ones for a long time, and you worked at the factory. She took care of Jerry for quite a
She
while.
took care of Jerry a couple of weeks, and then we took
Because I remember him being up there when I was once for a while. She always enjoyed having him.
A guy from the carnival came in, a black guy, and Jerry had never seen one before, and he says, "Grandma, that man's awful dirty." He needs a bath.
How did each of the couples here meet? Vern and Leona? How did, just one moment, we want to make sure we get this.
I know it's coming. I did want to hear this.